Yeah, thank you, everyone. The title of my presentation is Long-Term Behavioral Impact of an Integrated Home Garden Intervention in Bangladesh. And I thank my co-authors here mentioned on this slide. Research conducted by 3 organizations, IGZ, World Vegetable Center, and the Grameen Bikash Foundation. Micronutrient deficiencies are a large problem globally, as we know. Now, we of course have proven solutions like fortification, supplementation, biofortification, but those solutions do not directly address some of the root causes of the problem of hidden hunger, which is of course the lack of diversity in people's diets, as illustrated on this photo. You can fortify rice, but it's still only rice. So that creates our interest in the homestead food-based food production as a way of diversifying people's diets. A good home garden program design needs to have at least three components. The first one is you need to do training in nutrition, nutrition and health, of course hands-on training in gardening production, and you need to have the support systems in place to sustain the impact over time. The idea of such an intervention is that you simultaneously address both the supply of nutritious food at a household level as well as demand for such foods. World Vegetable Center has been implementing homestead food production in many countries globally, and what we see in all these cases where we have implemented we see a small-scale production of food, women being in control of the food production. We see a lot of diversity of different vegetables being grown and a lot of leafy vegetables being produced at a household level. And here just show some illustrations from different parts of the world. However, there are knowledge gaps in what we know about home garden production. First of all, we still lack robust evidence for the impact of home-based food production on the nutritional status of households. Although, I know that FPRI and Helen Keller International have done tremendous work in this area already. Then there's a knowledge gap related to the scalability of home garden interventions. We don't know if they are scalable. Many people say they're not scalable, but actually there's not a single study out in the literature that actually researches whether home gardens are scalable. Qualitative evidence suggests that actually there's a lot of spillover effects between households. One household is being a model for another household, so within a village these models actually very rapidly spread. But the good studies are completely lacking at this moment. Third question is sustainability. Almost all the studies of home gardens have been done immediately within the lifespan of a project or immediately after a project has ended. There are very few studies actually that have looked at the impact of a home garden intervention after a project ended, and especially several years after a project has ended. And that's the objective of this particular study. The question is, does the positive impact that we observe from a home garden intervention decrease over time? And we are doing that using a case study here from Bangladesh, from a home garden project implemented by 2 NGOs in Bangladesh, PRAC and ProShika, within a USAID-funded project in the Feed the Future zones. The project with technical backstopping of the World Vegetable Center and the International Potato Center. This intervention introduced home garden support to households through one-day intensive learning sessions with weekly follow-up for at least half a year, and then less frequent follow-up after that. Also, households were supplied with seed of 7 nutritious vegetables, as well as vines of sweet potato. Outcomes were measured along the impact pathway, and that's important in this study, that we're trying to see from the adoption of improved practices to nutritional knowledge to vegetable production to consumption. So try to trace if the impact pathway can be proven at every step that we have assumed. The data that we are using is first a baseline data before intervention was implemented in 2013 of a set of control and intervention households, non-randomized I have to say here. The survey was repeated for the same households in 2014 and 2016. So we have a total panel of about 619 households that have been interviewed 3 times. The outcomes and the socioeconomic characteristics were balanced at the baseline, which is important to notice here. So there's no evidence of selection bias between the intervention and control. So let me go to the results immediately. First of all, in terms of agricultural practice, and I have to mention here that some of the variables that I'm showing, we don't have 3 years data, we have only 1 year data, or 2 years data, so we cannot do the impact evaluation at the same approach. In terms of practices, we do see that in the adoption of improved practices that are trained through the home garden program is sustained after 3 years. So a lot of the practices that were trained still after 3 years after the intervention, households continue to do this, like raised seed beds, very important, right? And if you have flooding problems, irrigation, composting, use of chemical pesticides is one of the negative effects because that's not supposed to be happen in a home garden, but we do also find that as increase. Secondly, nutritional knowledge. This was measured using a relatively easy approach with like 12 statements given to respondents, all women, about nutritional knowledge, which they could answer as true or false. What we see there is like this measure suggests that there's at least like 100% increase in nutritional knowledge between the control group and the intervention group. So that's quite a big difference there. One of those effects is about the average cooking time of vegetables, which is often a problem because people stew vegetables for too long and nutrients get lost. We do find a significant increase, about 6-7 minutes in the cooking time of vegetables. So that's also positive results. And in terms of home garden production, the baseline was like 87 kilograms of home garden production. Then you see in this these columns like average treatment effect, or the impact in year 1, the impact in year 3, and then the last column shows the significance, and that's the significance between the year 1 impact and the year 3 impact. While noting that all the impacts that are shown for year 1 and year 3 are all significant at a 1% level. So what we focus on mostly is just if the impact is sustained here. And what we see is it's sustained in terms of the total quantity. You see an average increase in vegetable production even, but it's not significant. There's of course a lot of variation between households. What we see, however, is that in the first year, households shifted basically after the training from producing a lot of like gourds, cucurbits, to leafy vegetables, and after 3 years we find a reverse trend. So a lot of households went back to producing many gourds and less leafy vegetables. So that's not exactly what we would like to see, of course. We do want to have this leafy vegetables, especially for nutrition. So that's a bit of an unexpected negative effect. However, what we see on the positive side is that after 3 years, we find in the first year we find no effect on the winter season, and that may be because in 2014 Bangladesh was extreme drought, so they had difficulty in the dry season to produce vegetables. However, like in the third year, that problem was not there, so we find a significant increase in the winter season vegetable production. So that's a positive effect. In terms of nutrient supplies, and this just converted the quantities of vegetables produced to nutrients in terms of like nutrient food conversion tables. There we find that all the means have a slight reduction except for plant proteins, and that's related, of course, to the change from leafy vegetables back to cucurbits, less nutritious per kilogram. So we find a decline in the means, but none of them is significant except for calcium is significant, and for vitamin C we see a significant decline after 3 years. But all the other nutrients, no significant decline at least. In terms of vegetable consumption, and there you see also the graph, like it is a significant increase in vegetable consumption. You can say it's only 16%, but we have to keep in mind that the survey was conducted in May, and that's the driest period of the year in Bangladesh. So that's actually a good finding. I say even in the driest period, we find a significant effect, and there's only a 24-hour recall, so we cannot extrapolate that for the rest of the year, of course. But at least if it shows in the driest period of the year a significant effect, then we can assume that other periods of the year would also be significant. Lastly, women's empowerment. There also we use a very simple index. We like having like 10 statements about social norms about the status of women. And there also, interestingly, we find a significant improvement as a result of the home garden. After 3 years, we find that the curve has moved to the right. Also, that's the graph B, and the left graph is women's decision and control over the home garden. There we also see a significant increase of control over decisions in the home garden by those women. I'm coming to my conclusion. We do find that home garden production was maintained 3 years after the intervention, but there is some shift from leafy vegetables to gourds, and we don't understand at this moment exactly why that is. Is it because of the cultural perceptions, that preferences for eating gourds over leafy vegetables, or is it the problem in the seed supplies, for example, that gourds are easier to maintain or reproduce your own seed? This is what we will analyze in the future. We also find an increased supply of important micronutrients that has been sustained over the periods, increased consumption of vegetables, and increased knowledge and women's control over decision making. Hence, it does confirm our findings that the intervention contributes to better diets and that the effect is largely maintained for at least 3 years. And of course, now we are doing a 5-year study after study, and we're hoping to present the results next year. Lastly, I want to mention that the World Vegetable Center with partners is doing a lot of evaluations on home gardens. So this slide shows we have 5 ongoing randomized controlled trials in home gardens in different parts of the world and two quasi-experimental designs. With that, I would like to thank the donors for this study, USAID, the core donors for World Vegetable Center, but also the Drivers of Food Choice program that has supported my travel to this workshop. Thank you.